I want to touch today on some important points that I think you should know and understand about carbohydrate-rich foods. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. First and foremost, where do carbohydrates come from? When you ask someone that question, grains is what they generally answer. That's what people think of first when we think of carbohydrates. We think of grains, bread, pasta, crackers, cereals, foods like that. But of course, carbohydrates comes from a lot of different foods. Fruits are um, mostly carbohydrates, starchy vegetables, mostly carbohydrates, other vegetables. Starchy vegetables are the corn, potatoes, peas, beans. Other vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, asparagus, all those sort of things. So we're getting all of those foods are mostly made up of carbohydrates in addition to legumes. Legumes are a good source of protein as well, but also an excellent source of carbohydrates. Dairy, people think about fat and protein in dairy, but it is also the foundation comes from carbohydrates, from lactose, and then of course sweet foods, pastries and candy and things like that are all carbohydrates. So when people talk about really having a significant reduction in carbohydrates in their diet, you have to think about all these different food sources that they may be limiting and how do we create an optimal carbohydrate diet as opposed to thinking about just low carbohydrate. So how do you make the best choices within carbohydrates in our diet? They aren't all one size fits all by any means. You can get a similar quantity of carbohydrate from something that's very high in sugar as compared to a piece of fruit that is high in fiber and water and packed with vitamins and minerals. So some of the key points I want you to remember about carbohydrate foods are ways to make some of the best choices. Color gives us a picture of health as far as carbohydrate foods, fruits, and vegetables go. So blueberries, broccoli on the slide here are two of our most powerful antioxidant rich, vitamin and mineral rich carbohydrate foods. And that color is the nutrients sort of shining through. So having a colorful diet does give us a predictor that it is contain a lot of vitamins and minerals. Of course, nature-made color versus man-made color. Then variety as well. We get different nutrients from different types of foods. So even though blueberries are wonderful, there's benefit of eating strawberries and apples and bananas and oranges. We get different nutrients. So having variety within each of these food groups as well as among our diet overall is important. Then fiber, looking for carbohydrate foods that have some fiber in them as well. When we're looking at grain foods, breads or cereals, things like that, I recommend in general at least 3 grams of fiber per serving. That's not always very easy to find, but I think it's a good overall goal to aim for. And then whole grains, when we're looking at the grain category, how do we know if something is whole? We'll look at labels here in a minute, but whole grains are going to have more fiber, they're going to have more vitamins and minerals. So that's why we want to choose these as much as we can. So looking at a label, we want whole to be the first ingredient if we're looking at a wheat product. Oats are naturally whole. Bulgur, barley, those types of grains, amaranth, quinoa, those are all whole. Wheat is the one that we see refined mostly. And again, we're getting maximum nutrition when we have those that are the whole grain. They didn't remove the outer layers and remove that fiber and vitamins and minerals, but maintained the quality and integrity and nutrition. And then lastly, I would say unprocessed or minimally processed. Of course, with a grain food, we're not eating a stalk of wheat. It's going to have some processing, but we want things that are as close to nature as possible. So a potato versus a potato chip, clearly significant difference in processing and nutrition changes and deteriorates, lessens basically throughout the processing. So, canned food versus fresh or frozen. Fresh and frozen retain nutrient value better than canned, though I would also say that we should not make sweeping recommendations to say, everyone needs to buy organic and fresh. And, the fact is canned is still providing you a lot of nutrition. And you can get minimally processed canned that does not have added sodium and sugar and sweeteners and things like that. So these are some of the most important things I want you to think about with carbohydrates. Look for color, variety within the group, foods that are rich in fiber, whole grains, and then those that are not very processed.